The double doors of the hotel ballroom didn't just open. They were thrown wide with enough force to rattle the hinges. Every head in the room turned, expecting to see a waiter with a tray of champagne or maybe a late guest. Instead, they saw my sister. Tiffany stood framed in the doorway, wearing a floor-length, white lace gown that looked almost identical to the one I was currently wearing. A collective gasp rippled through the room. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked triumphant. She marched straight to the DJ booth, snatched the microphone from his hand, and tapped it twice. "I have some wonderful news!" she shrieked, tears already streaming down her perfectly made-up face. I didn't want to steal the spotlight, but I couldn't keep it in. "I'm pregnant." My mother clapped her hands over her mouth in joy. My father beamed. The guests, unsure of what to do, started a polite, confused applause. Tiffany soaked it in, rubbing her stomach and smiling at her husband, Colton, who looked stunned. "My name is Arden. I'm 27 years old, an interior designer who has spent her entire life being the background character to my sister's main event. But today, I wasn't going to fade away. I had been waiting for this exact moment for 4 weeks. I stood up slowly. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked calmly over to the head table where Colton sat, paralyzed by his wife's announcement. "Congratulations, Colton," I said, my voice steady. "I think you should hear the rest of the announcement." I handed him my phone, which was already paired to the ballroom's Bluetooth sound system, and I pressed play. The chaos of the wedding didn't happen in a vacuum. To understand why I handed that phone to my brother-in-law, you have to understand the 8 months of hell that led up to it. Tiffany wasn't just my sister. She was my boss at a high-end design firm in the city. She was the face of the company, charming and loud, while I was the workhorse who actually drew the plans. 8 months ago, we were bidding for a massive contract with a luxury hotel chain. It was a career-making project. I spent 3 weeks sleeping under my desk, drafting the blueprints, choosing the textiles, and creating the 3D renders. Tiffany spent those 3 weeks at spa appointments and client dinners. The morning of the presentation, I walked into the boardroom, exhausted but proud, holding my portfolio. Tiffany met me at the door and took it from my hands. "I'll handle the talking, sweetie." "You look tired," she said, patting my cheek. 10 minutes later, I sat in horror as Tiffany projected my designs onto the screen and used I and my vision in every sentence. When the CEO of the hotel chain asked about a specific architectural choice, Tiffany froze. I started to speak up to save the pitch, but she cut me off with a sharp laugh. "Arden helped me pick the font for the presentation," Tiffany told the board, rolling her eyes playfully. "She's still learning the basics." The board chuckled. I sat there, humiliated, my hand shaking in my lap. Later that day, the CEO gave Tiffany the promotion I had been promised. As she moved her things into the corner office, she leaned in close to my ear. "Know your place, little sister. You're just the help." 3 months before the wedding, the abuse moved from the office to my personal life. Tiffany insisted on being my maid of honor. When I tried to ask my best friend instead, Tiffany called our mother crying, claiming I was excluding her during a fragile time. My mother, as always, told me to be the bigger person. "Let her do it, Arden. She just wants to help," Mom had said. Tiffany's version of help was a nightmare. She booked my bachelorette party at a stuffy, expensive wine bar that I hated. It wasn't for me. It was a venue she was trying to court for a work event. She forced me to pay the deposit, claiming her card was acting up. But that wasn't the breaking point. The breaking point came when I started reviewing my wedding budget. I had set up a joint account for ease of planning and given her a debit card to handle payments while I worked. That was a mistake. My florist called me to ask why I had canceled the roses and switched to carnations. The DJ emailed to confirm the downgraded package. I hadn't requested any of those changes. I dug into the bank statements and realized Tiffany had been paying cheap vendors in cash and transferring the rest of the authorized budget amounts to her personal savings. She had stolen nearly $4,000 from my wedding budget in commissions. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront her right there, But I realized it was too close to the date to cancel the vendors without losing the deposits and reservations. I was trapped. So I didn't say a word. Instead, I started documenting every interaction and saving every receipt. I started building my dossier. 1 month before the wedding, my parents hosted a massive family barbecue. It was supposed to be a happy reunion. Even Austin's brother, Jace, was in town. Jace was the family outcast, a guy who couldn't hold down a job and had a reputation for trouble. Austin, my fiancé, barely spoke to him, but my parents insisted on inviting everyone. During the party, I went into the sunroom to check the lighting for a nursery design I was working on. I propped my iPad up on the wicker coffee table and started a long-form video recording to study exactly how the shadows moved across the room over time. I got called away to help my dad with the grill and forgot the iPad was running. When I came back an hour later, the room was empty. I stopped the recording and scrubbed through the footage to see the light changes. Suddenly, 2 figures walked into the frame. Tiffany and Jace. "You have to calm down," Tiffany was whispering, her voice frantic but playful. "Colton is a boring ATM. He doesn't suspect a thing. He's going to suspect something when the kid comes out looking like me." Jace laughed, pulling her close. My blood ran cold as I watched them on the screen. Tiffany wasn't just cheating on Colton. She was planning to pass Jace's baby off as her husband's to secure his trust fund for her gambling debts. She explicitly mentioned needing Colton's money to cover business losses. I realized then that this wasn't just a family drama. It was fraud. I saved the video file to the cloud and decided I wasn't going to tell anyone. Not yet. The week of the wedding, the tension was so thick I could taste it. Tiffany was manic. She kept hinting that she had a huge surprise for the reception. I knew exactly what she was planning. She wanted to announce her pregnancy at my wedding to ensure she was the center of attention. Normally, I would have begged her not to. I would have fought her. But this time I played her game. "You know, Tiff," I told her 2 days before the ceremony, while we were getting our nails done, "you've been glowing lately. You should really wear something stand out at the wedding. Maybe that white lace dress you bought for the gala. It really shows off your figure." Tiffany's eyes lit up. "You don't think it's too much? Wearing white?" "Not for you," I smiled. "You're the maid of honor. You should look your best." I watched the trap snap, shut behind her eyes. She thought I was finally submitting, finally accepting my role as her sidekick. On the morning of the wedding, while everyone was getting hair and makeup done, I went to the ballroom for a sound check. I handed the DJ a $100 bill and asked for the Bluetooth access code to the speakers, just in case we need to play a backup song. I synced my phone. I tested the volume. Standing at the altar hours later, saying my vows to Austin, I looked out at the front row. Tiffany was there, smirking, waiting for her moment to ruin my day. I squeezed Austin's hand and thought, "Enjoy it, sister. This is the last hour of your life as you know it." As the video cut to black on my phone screen, the ballroom went deathly quiet. The recording was over, but the echo of Tiffany's laugh seemed to hang in the suffocating air. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Then, the sound of retching broke the spell. Colton, pale as a sheet, doubled over and vomited onto the expensive carpet. The reality of hearing his wife call him an ATM had hit him physically. Jace, the man in the video, realized the game was up and tried to bolt toward the exit. But he didn't make it far. His own father, my new father-in-law, caught him by the arm, shoving him back against the wall with a look of pure betrayal, trapping him in the chaos. Tiffany didn't freeze. She attacked. "Turn that off!" she shrieked, her face twisting from shock to rage. She lunged at me, her hands curled into claws, but Austin stepped in front of me, using his body as a shield to block her path. "It's fake!" Tiffany screamed, spinning around to face the guests, her eyes wide and manic. "Arden is jealous. She used AI to make that. She's mentally unstable because I'm pregnant and she's not." My parents looked between us, desperate to cling to the lie. My mother took a hopeful step toward Tiffany. "AI? Oh, thank God. I knew it couldn't be real." But Colton wiped his mouth and stood up. He didn't look at my mother. He looked at Tiffany with dead eyes, pointing a shaking finger at the frozen frame on my phone screen. That video is an AI, Tiffany. It is. You have to believe me, she sobbed, reaching for him. Colton recoiled. In the video on your wrist, you're wearing the vintage Cartier bracelet Jace gave you. You told me you lost that bracelet 2 months ago. You're wearing it right there. He turned and walked out of the ballroom without looking back. The next morning, I woke up to a phone that had practically vibrated off the nightstand. I had 47 missed calls from my mother alone. I didn't want to look, but I had to know the damage. I sat at my kitchen table, drinking black coffee, and opened the texts. They weren't apologies. They were threats. How could you do this to your sister? My mother wrote. You humiliated us in front of everyone. Fix this immediately. Tell Colton it was a prank, or don't bother coming to Christmas. My father was more direct. You are out of the will until this is rectified. They didn't care that Tiffany was cheating. They didn't care that she was planning to defraud her husband. They only cared that the picture-perfect image of our family had been shattered. Tiffany was currently at their house, I learned from a cousin, playing the stressed pregnant victim and claiming the stress I caused might hurt the baby. I felt a pang of guilt, but then I remembered the smirk on her face at the altar. I remembered her stealing my portfolio. The guilt evaporated, replaced by cold resolve. I didn't call them back. Instead, I sent a single group text to my parents and Tiffany. I didn't just record the affair. I recorded the business fraud, too. Keep pushing me and the IRS gets the next email. My phone stopped buzzing instantly. Silence is a powerful answer. I returned to work 3 days later, after a very short, very tense honeymoon staycation with Austin. I walked into the firm expecting whispers, but the office was dead silent. My keycard didn't work at the main door. I had to buzz the receptionist, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Tiffany is waiting for you in the conference room, she mumbled. Tiffany had beat me there. She sat at the head of the table, flanked by the HR director and the CEO. She looked immaculate, not a hair out of place, playing the role of the concerned executive perfectly. Arden. The CEO said, his voice grave, "We've had some disturbing reports about your behavior at your wedding." "My wedding is a personal matter," I said, gripping my purse strap. "Not when you use company technology to create deepfake video footage to harass a senior partner." Tiffany interjected smoothly. She looked at me with pity. "We know you've been under a lot of stress, Arden. The jealousy, it makes people do crazy things." "I didn't create anything," I argued. "It was raw footage. HR has determined that your presence creates a hostile work environment," the director said, sliding a paper across the table. "You are being placed on indefinite administrative leave pending an investigation into your mental stability." I looked at Tiffany. She offered me a tiny, venomous smirk. She had spun the narrative. To them, I wasn't a whistleblower. I was the crazy little sister. As security escorted me out, I realized I had underestimated her. I spent the next 2 days in my pajamas, curtains drawn, feeling like I had lost the war. Tiffany had my job, my parents, and the narrative. Then, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. It was Colton. Austin stood behind me, his hand on my shoulder, letting me decide if we opened the door. I nodded and we let him in. Colton looked wrecked. He hadn't shaved in days, and his eyes were bloodshot. "Is it true," he asked, his voice raspy, "about the business fraud? Or was that just a threat to scare your parents?" I didn't say a word. I walked to my home office, pulled out the dossier of receipts I had saved from the wedding planning, the canceled florists, the fake invoices. I handed him the file. Colton flipped through the pages. "She sends me the P&L reports personally," he muttered, realization dawning. I never audited them because I trusted her. She was doctoring the numbers before I ever saw them. "She's been doing this at the firm, too," I said quietly. "I just couldn't prove it before they locked me out." Colton closed the folder. "I don't just want a divorce. I want to destroy her. I control the angel investment fund that keeps her division afloat. I'm pulling the money, but I need someone to run the audit when she's gone. Are you in?" We set up a war room in Colton's guest house. It was safer than my place. Tiffany wouldn't think to look for me there. Although my company email was blocked, my access to the shared architectural cloud hadn't been fully revoked yet, probably because Tiffany thought I was too incompetent to know how to use the backend servers. She was wrong. For 12 hours straight, I combed through the project files. Colton sat opposite me, drinking coffee and watching the screen. We were looking for the big one, the hotel chain project. Here, I whispered, pointing to a purchase order. She billed the client for Italian Carrara marble for the lobby flooring. $120,000. I cross-referenced it with the delivery manifest from the supplier. But look at what was delivered, I said. Synthetic composite tiles. Cost $20,000. She pocketed the $100,000, Colton said, doing the math. It's not just the money, I explained, my heart racing. It's safety. I pulled up the manufacturer specs for the composite tiles. They aren't rated for high-traffic commercial lobbies. They're slippery when wet. If someone falls, the hotel is liable for millions. I kept digging. Deep in a mislabeled subfolder, I found a directory named Exit Strategy. Inside were drafted emails and doctored logs, all dated for next month after her baby was due. She was setting up a paper trail to frame me for the material swaps. She was going to send me to jail, I realized, feeling sick. Not if we get to the board first, Colton said. Print everything. Tiffany realized she was losing control. Colton wasn't answering her calls, and her credit cards had been declined. So, she did what she always did when cornered. She went to the public. She posted a photo on Instagram, a grainy black and white ultrasound picture next to a tear-stained tissue. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. Hardest day of my life. Abandoned by my husband and betrayed by my own sister when I need them most. Stress is so bad for the baby, but I'm trying to stay strong for my little miracle. Hashtag single mom, hashtag betrayal. It went viral locally within hours. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. The internet didn't care about truth. They cared about a pregnant woman crying. My phone began to ping with notifications, but this time it wasn't family. It was strangers. People found my LinkedIn profile and left comments calling me a monster and a home wrecker. Even a few mutual friends from high school posted support for Tiffany, calling her brave. I watched the comments roll in, feeling a tightness in my chest. If I waited any longer, she would win the court of public opinion so completely that the truth wouldn't matter. I couldn't play defense anymore. I picked up my phone and called the CEO's private number. He answered on the second ring, sounding annoyed. This had better be good, Arden. Meet me at Colton's house in an hour, I said, my voice hard. Bring your personal lawyer. Unless you want to explain a multi-million-dollar fraud lawsuit to the shareholders on Monday. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, sat on Colton's leather sofa, looking out of place in the casual setting. He refused the water I offered. His lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Verna, had her pen poised over a notepad. You have 5 minutes, Henderson said, checking his watch. Before I call the police for corporate espionage. You won't want the police involved in this, I said. I projected my laptop screen onto the living room TV. I pulled up the side-by-side comparison. The invoice for the Italian marble Tiffany had billed to the hotel client, and the receipt for the cheap, slippery composite tiles she had actually installed. That's a $200,000 difference on materials alone, I explained. But the real issue is liability. When, not if, a guest slips and breaks a hip in that lobby, the hotel will sue our firm for negligence. And since Tiffany signed off on it as the lead architect, I let the sentence hang. Henderson turned pale. The realization washed over him. The firm was sitting on a ticking time bomb. If this gets out, we are ruined, Henderson muttered. Then his eyes narrowed and he looked at me. We need to contain this. We can't let the client know. If we position this as a rogue error by a junior employee, insurance covers it. If it's systemic fraud by a partner, we are uninsurable. He was looking directly at me. He wasn't planning to fire Tiffany. He was planning to frame me to save the brand. I was about to tell Henderson exactly where he could shove his scapegoat plan when his phone buzzed. Then Verna's phone buzzed. Then mine. It was a mass email from Tiffany's lawyer, copied to the entire board of directors. To whom it may concern, my client, Tiffany Miller, has been subjected to a hostile work environment and targeted harassment due to her pregnancy. Any attempt to terminate her employment or tarnish her reputation will be met with an immediate lawsuit for pregnancy discrimination and emotional distress. Henderson threw his phone onto the cushion. She knows. She must have a friend in IT who saw you logging in, Verna said, closing her notebook. We can't touch her. If we fire a pregnant woman who just filed a harassment claim, the optics will destroy us. The jury will hate us, so she gets away with fraud. Colton asked, his voice rising. Until the baby is born, she is untouchable, Verna said coldly. We are freezing all internal investigations. Arden, you remain on leave. Do not come to the building. They walked out, leaving me standing there with my evidence. My phone vibrated again. A text from Tiffany. Nice try, little sister. You can't fire a pregnant woman. I win. She was right. The corporate shield was too strong. I needed to break her leverage. I didn't need a lawyer. I needed the whole truth about the baby. I knew I couldn't win through HR. The law was designed to protect victims, and Tiffany had successfully painted herself as one. To strip her armor, I had to prove the foundation of her discrimination claim, the pregnancy itself, was part of the fraud. I needed Jace. I tracked him down at a cheap motel on the edge of town. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing the same clothes from the wedding. He tried to slam the door when he saw me, but I jammed my foot in the frame. I'm not here to yell, I said. I'm here to offer you a way out. He hesitated. Out of what? Tiffany is going to burn you, I said bluntly. When the fraud comes out, she will blame you. She'll say you coerced her, that you forced her to steal the money. You'll go to jail, and she'll play the victim. Jace looked terrified. He hadn't thought that far ahead. If you help me, I continued, you can control the narrative. Admit the truth now, and you look like a whistleblower. Stay silent, and you're her accomplice. Austin might one day forgive a brother who told the truth, but never a liar. Jace went to his duffel bag and pulled out an old iPhone. I have the texts, he said, where she admits the dates. She stopped sleeping with Colton in January. We hooked up in February. The math doesn't lie. He forwarded me the screenshots. There it was in blue and gray bubbles. Tiffany admitting the baby was his and laughing about making Colton pay for it. Tiffany's baby shower was the social event of the season, hosted at a garden estate she couldn't afford. She had invited key clients, including the hotel executives, to prove she was still the queen bee of the design world. It was a power move to show she was untouchable. I wasn't invited, obviously, but Colton was. Halfway through the gift opening, while Tiffany was holding up a cashmere blanket and posing for photos, Colton walked into the garden. The guests went quiet, expecting a romantic reconciliation. Tiffany smiled nervously. Colton, you came. Colton walked up to her, pulled a thick envelope from his jacket, and dropped it on the pile of gifts. Divorce papers, he announced, his voice carrying across the lawn. And an eviction notice. Tiffany laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. Oh, honey, don't be dramatic in front of the clients. At that exact moment, phone started chiming. Jace had just hit post. He tagged the design firm, the hotel clients, and Tiffany. The image was the screenshot of her text. It's definitely yours, Jace. Colton is just the wallet. He'll never know. I watched from the parking lot as the hotel executives checked their phones. I saw the look on their faces shift from polite boredom to disgust. The pregnancy discrimination. Shield just shattered. You can't claim protection for a pregnancy you are using to commit financial fraud against the company's investor. Tiffany looked around, realizing the air had left the room. This time, there was no microphone to save her. The following Monday, the firm was a war zone. The pregnancy discrimination shield had evaporated the moment the police opened an investigation into Tiffany's fraud. You can't claim workplace harassment when you've been caught embezzling funds from the company's primary investor. Tiffany, however, refused to accept reality. She barricaded herself in her office, screaming through the glass that she was the victim of a conspiracy. Security was hesitant to touch her. That's when I walked in. I wasn't wearing my old junior associate ID badge. I was wearing a visitor pass that read interim audit lead. "You can't be here." Tiffany spat as I pushed open her door. "You're suspended." "Actually," I said, placing a folder on her desk, "Colton just exercised the debt clause in his investment contract. He owns a majority controlling stake now. He appointed me to oversee the forensic audit of your division." I nodded to the security guards. "Please escort Ms. Miller out. If she resists, call the police for trespassing." Tiffany's face crumbled. She grabbed her purse, realizing the game was truly over. She didn't fight the guards, but as she passed me, she leaned in, her eyes wild with malice. "You think you won," she hissed. "I downloaded the entire client database last night. I've already emailed every contact. You have an empty firm, Arden. Enjoy the ghost town." Tiffany wasn't bluffing. She had stolen the contact list and was aggressively poaching our clients, spinning a lie that our firm was under federal investigation and that she was starting a new, ethical boutique agency. We started losing contracts by the hour, but I knew there was only one client that really mattered, the hotel chain. If we lost them, we went under. I drove to the hotel headquarters and demanded a meeting. The executives were cold. They had already received Tiffany's pitch. "We're moving our business to Tiffany's new agency," the VP told me bluntly. "She says she designed the lobby and we trust her vision." "Her vision is a liability," I said. I slid the safety report across the table, the one I had compiled in Colton's guest house. "She billed you for Italian marble and installed cheap composite. It's not just fraud, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. If you stick with her, you're complicit in endangering your guests." The VP hesitated, looking at the report. I knew I needed to offer more than just fear. I needed to offer a solution. "However," I added, locking eyes with him, "my firm is prepared to rip out and replace that flooring at our own cost starting Monday if you stay with us. We clean up the mess and you get the quality you paid for." The VP picked up the phone. "Get legal in here," he barked. They didn't just stay with us. By the end of the meeting, the hotel chain had filed a breach of contract lawsuit against Tiffany personally. She hadn't just lost a client. She had gained a powerful enemy. With no job, a pending divorce, and multiple lawsuits piling up, Tiffany had nowhere to go. She moved back in with our parents. For a few weeks, my parents tried to play peacemakers. They called me, begging me to drop the lawsuits, saying Tiffany had learned her lesson. I ignored them. The breaking point came a month later. Tiffany, desperate to pay a retainer for a criminal defense lawyer, stole my father's credit card from his wallet. She charged $5,000 before the fraud alert triggered. The illusion finally shattered. My parents realized that the golden child they had worshipped was a thief who would burn them to stay warm. My mother called me that night, sobbing. "You were right, Arden. I'm so sorry. We told her she has to leave. Please, can we come over? We want to fix things." I stood in my kitchen, looking at the peace I had built with Austin. I loved my parents, but I loved myself more. "I'm not bailing you out emotionally," I said firmly. "You watched her abuse me for years and told me to be quiet. You created her. Now you have to deal with her." I blocked their numbers. It hurt, but it was the kind of hurt that heals clean. 5 months later, the dust had settled. I was officially the creative director of the firm. We had rebranded and business was booming. Austin and I were happier than ever, rebuilding our lives without the toxic weight of my family. I was reviewing blueprints in my office when the receptionist buzzed me. "Arden, there's a woman here to see you. She says she's your sister." I hesitated, then told her to send her in. Tiffany looked unrecognizable. Her hair was dull, her clothes were wrinkled, and that arrogant spark in her eyes was gone, replaced by exhaustion. She claimed she had lost the baby due to stress, but Colton had already told me the truth. He found the ultrasound image she posted on a stock photo website. There never was a baby. It was just another lie to secure the bag. "I need a job," she said, her voice trembling. "Nobody will hire me. The lawsuits took everything." Colton took the house. I'm sleeping on a friend's couch. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'll take an internship. I'll file papers. Please, Arden. I have nothing. I looked at her, and for a second I felt pity. She was my sister. I could end her suffering with a single signature. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a piece of paper. Tiffany's eyes lit up, thinking it was a contract. I slid it across the desk. It was a list of therapists who specialized in narcissistic personality disorders. I'm not hiring you, I said calmly. You're a liability, and quite frankly, you're not a very good designer. She stared at the paper, her face reddening. Then help me. I'm homeless. Actually, about that, I said, leaning back in my chair. I bought your old house from Colton last week. He sold it to me as part of the divorce liquidation. Austin and I are turning it into a rental property. It has good bones, even if the decor was tacky. Tiffany stood up, opening her mouth to scream, but I pressed the intercom button. Security, please remove the trespasser. 2 guards stepped in. As they dragged her out, screaming obscenities, I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing. I packed up my bag and drove home to Austin. I placed a hand on my stomach, smiling at the secret I hadn't told anyone yet. I was pregnant. The company stock was up, my marriage was strong, and the recording was deleted. I was finally done with the past. Some people mistake silence for weakness. They never hear the bomb ticking until it's too late.